Okay, so let's see how we can create these buttons. First of all, I will grab vertical box. This vertical box is like a box that we can place different things vertically. So we will anchor this vertical box to the left side, like just like this. As for the position X, I will do 50, so it's slightly off the edge. And offset top will be 0, same with offset bottom will be 0. And as for size, I will go with 600. So in this area, we will just place different buttons. But before we do the buttons, what we can do is we can grab image, move it to this vertical box, and you can see these images and buttons are stacking up vertically. That's what we want. And as for the image, in the Udemy horror assets, you have these two logos, this bookhead logo and this one. So you can just choose whatever you want, or you can use your own logo for the game, but I will go with logo too. So let's go to content drawer, UI, and just move this logo here. Okay, so now we can actually select this logo here, logo 2, yep. But you can see this logo is pretty big. So what we can do is we can click here, fill. So it will fill this vertical box. And we also need to align this here to the center. And when we will add more buttons, this logo will be squished a little bit better. So let's actually do that. Let's add buttons. If you just search for button, you will see we have this common button. And let's just move it to our vertical box right here. So the first button will be our play button. So what we can do is we can just rename this to play button, and we can also make this as a variable. But this button is not looking good. It's just like gray square, and I don't want that. I want this button to be fancy. So what we can do is we can go to style, go to normal, and here we have tint. So what we can do is we can just reduce the opacity to 0, and we'll do the same thing for hovered. We'll set it to 0 opacity and pressed. So this button will not be visible because I just want to display a text on top of that button. So whenever this button is normal, hovered, or pressed, we want to make sure that it is invisible. And as for the text, we can just search for text, and we can move this text on top of that button. And as you can see, this button now is just this simple text. So we can also name this text play text, and we can make it as a variable. And here on the right side where we have this text, we can just type play. So we have our first button, but it doesn't look good. I mean, this text is very simple and it's also pretty small. So first of all, let's just go to font and here change the size to 100. But this font does not look good. So I will show you how we can easily import custom fonts into Unreal. So let's go to content drawer, and in UI, we can go and create a new folder here called fonts. And inside this fonts folder, we can import any font that you want. And here in this folder, we have these two fonts, which is Hell's Kitchen Devil and Hell's Kitchen Devil Bold. So we can just import them inside this folder. And here, would you like to create a new font asset using the imported font face as its default font? We can press yes and yes. So we have these two fonts here. We can go back to our button right now. And here for the font family, we can just select our Hell's Kitchen Devil. And this font looks a little bit better for a horror game, in my opinion. Okay, so we have our first button. What we can do now is we can click on this button and we can just do Control D to duplicate it. And as you can see, we have our second button. And we can create 3 different buttons: play, credits, and quit game buttons. So this one will be in the center, which will be our credits button. And as for the text, we can change this to credits text. And here, obviously, we need to change this play text to credits. And we can duplicate a button one more time. And this will be our quit game. This text will be quit text. And obviously, change the actual text to quit game. Okay, so this looks actually really nice, but as you can see, these buttons are very close to each other. So in order to fix that, we can use something called spacer. And spacer basically just create a space between different sections of your UI. So we can grab the spacer and we can move the spacer between the buttons. So the first one will be here, and we will make the spacer a little bit bigger. So let's set the size here to 100, and we can duplicate the spacer, and move it here. So you can see now we have some space between these buttons. But this quit game button, in my opinion, is a little bit too close to the edge of our game, of our UI. So I will duplicate spacer one more time and just put it on the bottom of the vertical box. So now you can see this bookhead title is perfectly sized. And now when we press play, you can see this menu is actually looking pretty great in my opinion. But when we hover over these buttons, they don't give us any idea that we're actually hovering over them, and it just looks very odd. So we will just make this font bigger whenever we hover over a button.